Howdy, tabletop RPG fans. Thank you for supporting this channel. I'm Rangleme, Grand Poobah of Game Design, and this Reviews Day's topic is about Teenagers from Outer Space RPG. Teenagers from Outer Space, TFOS, is an anime comedy RPG by Michael Pondsmith and Talsorian Games, first published in 1987. Talsorian created many great games like Mekton, Cyberpunk, including the Cyberpunk 2020, Castle Falkenstein, and now The Witcher tabletop RPG. And I even helped a bit technically on the Bloodwake video game by Michael Pondsmith. Here is my copies of the Teenagers from Outer Space first, second, and third editions, as well as the field trip adventure modules and the third-party licensed version of Star Raiders, which is based on the Teenagers from Outer Space license. So Talsorian Games is Michael Pondsmith, but it was also a number of his friends and families who helped him create the original Teenagers from Outer Space and all the other RPGs that Talsorian published. The artwork throughout the book is incredible, and it says here in the credits that art was done by Scott Riggles and Mike Ebert. And I have to say that it is still some of my favorite comedy RPG artwork. They do a great job of combining anime and funny comics and a lot of good stuff that it makes the game much more enjoyable. Lots of good examples of characters being wonky and funny, and just a number of different excellent pieces of artwork throughout the book. So the system is very, very simple. You have a number of stats, and the premise of the game is that you're all teenagers in a high school, and that the humans now have to share their high schools with aliens who have immigrated to Earth and moved in and started going to their schools. And you have a number of different powers that these aliens have, and some of them have an economy that's equivalent to the treasury of a major kingdom in another world, that they can spend on things like flying cars and weapons and cool music listening devices. So there's essentially types of characters that are human, near human, not very near human, and real weirdies. And there are basic stats like smarts, bod, relationship with parents, luck, looks, cool, bonk, and driving. Bonk is your hit points. Since it's a comedy game, there is no dying. But when you get knocked out, you're out of the game for a little while and have to recover. You have knacks, powers, and traits. Your knacks are basically bonuses to certain roles that you're going to have related to things like convincing mom or dodging or look baffled so they don't clobber you. Powers are a variety of things. Humans tend to not have regular powers, but they have powers that aliens don't have, like incredible luck or a thing called fake out that makes it easy for you to lie to an alien. The idea of the game is that you're going to roll a single die. You're going to add the stat that's closest to what you're doing. So let's say you're going to fire a gun. You're going to roll bod, or you're going to roll d6 and you're going to add bod. And if you happen to have something like use particle energy weapons as a knack, then you've got a bonus for that as well. If you roll extremely high, there's a thing called when too much is too much, and generally bad stuff happens. So the game actually rewards mediocrity, the idea being that if you're so good at seducing women that you ask a girl out and she falls madly in love with you, she's gonna pretty much start writing about her true love on the side of the gym wall, and she's going to start planning your wedding and naming all of your children and deciding where it is that you're going to have your home together. So be careful what you roll and how you roll, and make sure that you understand that if you roll too high, you're going to pay for it. It is a comedy game. The idea is not to balance characters or make them even remotely similar in capabilities. It's to have some people who are so good at one thing and other people who are so good at something else. And in the long run, the parts that make this work is that the school and your parents, while they're not particularly dumb, are at the mercy of these students who are deciding what the fate of the world is going to be and how to stop the craziness that happens in a high school with aliens that have strange powers. So Field Trip is an interesting expansion book because it has a number of wonderful adventure plots. The actual author on this was Dave Friedland, and it includes a number of game mastering tips and things, and really was an excellent book for teaching people how to run a series of adventures based on the TFOS system, and really how to add comedy and elements to the gameplay that makes it more interesting to play in a game like this. The second edition added an additional powers table, changed the layout, changed some of the artwork. It's a pretty good example of applying the errata from the first edition and helping to explain things a little better. But it was in 1989, and when the third edition came out, which, if I remember correctly, was 97. 97? 1997. I'm good. This book actually had a comic at the beginning to sort of set the world and how it all works together. Then it had the table of contents. Then it had all of what a role-playing game is and everything else, and you could skip that section. Certainly, if you had the previous editions, you could skip whole parts of the book. It did have 5 alien power tables instead of 3 or 4, and a lot more information about running adventures, a lot more information in general about sample character stats and pieces that you could use in your own games or as characters that you might encounter. In general, it was packed full of information, even though it was just over 110 pages long. It is a terrific example of building out all the knowledge that 10 years of making teenagers from outer space. Probably one of the best sections in here is that using a TV guide style episode list, they provide these hook adventures, basically episodes 1 through 19 of sample adventure ideas that you might take your teenagers through in the course of doing things, and using these characters or using these settings or ideas as a launching pad for your own adventures. This was a brilliant part of the addition to this book that they did. Like I said, the Star Riders was a licensed version from ENS Games, and it used the TFOS core rules, but then expanded it into this wonky sci-fi full-on adventure. You were no longer teenagers stuck in a high school. You were out and about in a science fiction world with all the tropes and pieces that go with a comedy sci-fi adventure. And it was a very interesting addition to the idea that it used many of the techniques that TFOS did to teach the game and explain the game and how the game all works, but at the same time brought a lot of original equipment and very cool explanations to how the world works, and in general creates a very successful science fiction setting in a comedy and humorous way, using those basic rules. So that's Star Riders. So this is an example of the Teenagers from Outer Space 3rd edition character sheet. And you can see that there's a place to draw your character. There's things that you have in your locker, which is your equipment, your inventory. A place for your name, your type. You can be human, near human, not very near human, or a real weirdie. Near human would be a Martian or an alien like Spock of Vulcan. Not very near human would be a talking rabbit or a hedgehog or any of a number of anthropomorphic characters. And a really weirdie is something like a blob or a slime or an octopus or potentially a kaiju. And all of these determine which places you're going to get your powers later in the character sheet. Stats include smarts, bod, relationship with parents, which Star Raiders calls relationship with pals, which I have replaced in my versions when I play the game with just social. Luck, driving, looks, cool, and bonk. And as we've mentioned already, there is no death in a comedy RPG, so you replace death with being knocked out. And when you attack somebody, either mentally or physically, you are attacking their bonk, and when their bonk reaches 0, they're unconscious temporarily. Now, I mentioned before about powers coming from the type of character that you are. And each of the editions has a short selection of power tables, and the first edition starts with 3, and then the second edition has 4, and the third edition has 5 power tables. There's always a possibility that you get nothing when you roll on a power table, but if you get a power, they're generally things like being able to fly, being able to zap people without having an extra weapon, having fire breath, being able to change your gender, monstering out and becoming a kaiju, and any number of other kinds of weird powers that are on the power list. The interesting part is that if you're human, you have none of the access to this kind of power table, but you do have powers that aliens don't have. Every human has the ability called fake out, and fake out means that whatever you say, an alien will believe it because you're from Earth and obviously you know better than them. And second, aliens have a poor concept of what lying actually means. So besides fake out, you can be filthy rich, incredibly cute, run like heck. You can also have nothing. You can have toughness, lose it, incredible luck, or connections. Next, you have knacks. And knacks are things that allow for players to have specialties and things that they're particularly good at that other people would generally not be good at. And you may be good at clobbering or convincing someone or getting a date, or playing air guitar or fixing things or never looking rumpled, or having a dazzling smile, or being able to juggle, or piloting a flying saucer. And there's a long list of knacks that you can have. And then there's traits, and traits are essentially personality pieces that they describe what the player's personality is. It would be, oh yeah, that's Bob. He's always shy or pessimistic or humble or manic or trusting or abrasive or tomboy or any number of other personality traits. And that is how the character sheet works in Teenagers from Outer Space. I've included links in the comment section below for purchasing your own copy of Teenagers from Outer Space, or the add-on for Field Trip from DriveThruRPG, and those are affiliate links. If you purchase using those links, you're actually helping this channel to make more videos, and of course I appreciate that. So thank you very much. This episode is brought to you by Kaboomkin, the smaller, faster, funnier RPG of cartoon, fairy tale, post-apocalypse mayhem. It's time to blow stuff up. Get it now at www.kaboomkin.com. Thank you all for watching this episode. Hit like, subscribe, or ring the bell, or Booger will get you. If you want to see more videos like this, go to hopspush.com and buy an RPG or t-shirt. Do good, annoy evil, and bye-bye.